is a first reading of the proposed renaming of Clay Elementary School. We're joined by Samir Naji, Facilities Communications Supervisor, and Lindsay tell me how to say your name. Michaliszyn. I know, and I'm one with a name that's impossible to pronounce. Okay, Michaliszyn, principal of Clay Elementary. And if you can go ahead and please present the item to us.
Sure. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
Michaliszyn.
We good? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, board members and Superintendent Jackson. Am I? Sorry. Okay. Here I am. Okay, so thank you, Superintendent Jackson and board members for giving us this opportunity to share with you the process that we engaged in after receiving a community proposal to rename our school. So Samir and I are looking forward to sharing with you the steps that we took in engagement with our community and stakeholders.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Samir Naji. So kind of want to recap how we got here. So about mid last year, we received a proposal, a fairly strong one at that, with really strong justification to change the name of Henry Clay Elementary School. There was a petition attached to that with about 1,000 signatures. And the community members, the parents from the school, made a fairly strong case for why the school should be renamed. They also suggested 4 names for the district to consider, and that was Octavia Butler, Amanda Gorman, Bell Hooks, and Dr. Bertha Pendleton. This proposal and petition, along with the 4 names, was brought to the School Names Committee for their consideration. And speaking to the strength of the proposal, the committee immediately endorsed a name change, but tasked staff with conducting additional community input on what the new name might be. So working with the school principal, there was a school site forum that was hosted at Clay Elementary where the proposers had an opportunity to present to the Clay Elementary families. Or concurrently and right around that same time, a survey, and what we're calling the initial survey, was sent out to Clay families and staff, soliciting feedback and suggestions that the committee should be considering. From there, the committee reviewed those submissions and discussed them at length. The committee looked at, basically looked at a pool of possible names, the 4 that were suggested by the original proposers, the survey results that were generated out of Clay Elementary School, and of course any names that were considered by previous school names committees, and they selected a final 4 and asked staff to develop a final survey that would be distributed to Clay families and staff. We recognize the work that the community partners who made the proposal have put into this, so we shared the draft survey with them for feedback. There was feedback on some of the language descriptions on some of the names, and they requested that the committee consider add an additional name to the survey. We shared that feedback with the committee. They've made those adjustments to the survey language and did go ahead and add a 5th name. So the final survey was a survey of 5 names that was emailed to the entire Clay community and to Clay staff. We had the survey open for a couple of weeks, and we received 106 responses, and you could see the votes down below. The majority voted for Rolling Hills Leadership Academy with just over 50% of the votes, and Dr. Bertha Pendleton, if I'm seeing it correctly from here, or no, Bell Hooks Leadership Academy was number 2 with about just shy of 20% of the vote. The committee convened over 2 meetings to discuss the survey results. There was a lot of discussion about it, but ultimately this committee, the consensus was to abide by the survey results. That was the public vote. So unanimously, with a lot of consensus, the committee voted to recommend Rolling Hills. As we have seen in previous elementary school name changes, there was a lot of heated debate around Leadership Academy, or elementary school. So this committee, actually it was the suggestion, I think, of the student, one of the student members of the committee, offered a compromise position of Rolling Hills Leadership Elementary School. And that is the recommendation brought to the school board today by the School Names Committee. And that was essentially the process that we followed. Happy to take any questions that the board members might have.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it. This is, again, want to reiterate, the first reading of the item, so it's informational only. Action will be taken at a later date. Do we have any speakers on the item?
Yes, we have 10 speakers. I'll call their names if they could please line up, and each speaker will have 2 minutes. Jerrod Tucker, Sabrina Young, Denisha Jenkins.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. My name is Jerrod Tucker. I've got 2 students at Clay Elementary. So why are we here? We are here because over 1,200 people have stood up and said, we are not okay with Henry Clay, and we want a restorative name from our school. Those 2 things together have been the goal since the very beginning. We commend you all for taking the first step, changing the name of the school. Now we ask you to take care of the second part, which is choosing a restorative name. Bell Hooks once said, "Justice demands integrity. It is to have a moral universe, not only know what is right or wrong, but to put things in perspective and weigh things." In our proposal, we put into perspective not only Henry Clay's history, but the climate nationally and right here in San Diego when the school was named. Henry Clay enslaved over 122 people. He amended the Fugitive Slave Act to make sure that countless others would be brutalized and even killed. In 1957, when our school opened, San Diego Unified also chose to honor Robert E. Lee with the elementary school. This was the same year as the Little Rock Nine in Arkansas, and just 3 years removed from Brown versus Orderification. Justice demands integrity. So for the Names Committee to have all this perspective, to weigh these things and land on rolling hills is disappointing and frankly heartbreaking. Malcolm X said, "If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that the blow made, and they won't even admit the knife is there. Rolling hills is not progress. Choosing Bell Hooks is." She spoke extensively on the power of love and an engaged education system to transform lives. These are values that we believe in, and we're certain that you do as well. I'll close with this. In February, the Board of Education passed a resolution in which they stated that the history and contributions of Black citizens have consistently been overlooked, misinterpreted, and undervalued in the curriculum of public education institutions prior to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and still today. At the end of the statement, it was resolved that the San Diego Unified School District does hereby recognize the tremendous contributions made by Black Americans to the development of our culture, communities, and nation, and our ongoing commitment to fostering an anti-racist, anti-biased, and restorative district for all students. Black Lives Matter. This is your resolution, these are your words, and to that I say, prove it. You cannot in one breath acknowledge that the accomplishments of Black Americans have been long overlooked and undervalued, and then in the next breath say we need yet another racist school name changed to a generic geography feature. So please prove it by making the restorative choice and replace Henry Clay with Bell Hooks for our elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Sabrina Young, a kindergarten teacher at Henry Clay Elementary, and I also live in the neighborhood 2 blocks from the school. I'm active in all things Clay Park and Clay Elementary. 1 year ago, our Not Okay with Clay grassroots community initiative came to the board to advocate for a restorative name change for our community school. Until that time, neither the school community nor district had made any effort to rename Clay Elementary, even though the legacy of Henry Clay is not one worthy of any public space. Through our efforts, the issue came before the board and a district-level renaming committee was formed. At first, we were genuinely appreciative that the district was paying attention to the concern and to their responsibility as an institution committed to ending systemic racism. However, the committee's effort fell short. The renaming committee's process effectively silenced the voices that originally brought the renaming initiative forward. The school district did not include any of the Not Okay with Clay community members on the renaming committee or in any meetings, even in an advisory capacity. The school district did not provide any legitimate community education or facilitate any deep or meaningful dialogue that this issue warrants. The renaming committee's town hall and surveys failed to address restoration, the concept, the topic, and what that might even look like. The name Rolling Hills goes against the voice and mission of our community and goes against the Board of Education's public commitment toward restorative and racial justice. If the renaming committee had included Not Okay with Clay's input, they would have known that the name Rolling Hills is a known allusion to the name of our neighborhood, Rolando. Rolando has historically been a racially redlined neighborhood, meaning black people were not allowed to purchase homes. To name this school Rolling Hills is to continue to uphold and celebrate a history of white supremacy. Please do not support this. The committee put forth a generalized survey asking for the community's input. While the name Rolling Hills did garner some support, we cannot replace one racist name with another with racist roots.
Thank you. If you'd like to wrap up, please.
We are holding you as our board to a higher standard. We will only accept a name that is restorative and aspirational. As a board member, you have the power and the responsibility
Thank
to
you.
reject the committee's recommendation and all processes used to manufacture
Thank you.
outcomes
Your time is up.
that reproduce systemic racism and the processes thereby.
Thank you. And just to want to remind everyone that we really do appreciate your feedback, and we do ask that you please keep within the 2-minute time limit. And again, you will see a yellow light and then a red light as your time is coming up.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Denisha Jenkins. I'm a registered nurse and a Henry Clay parent. I'm also a graduate professor specializing in ethics and institutional responsibilities towards human rights and justice. I'm speaking to oppose the Names Committee's specific unilateral decision to change from elementary school to Leadership Elementary, or originally Leadership Academy and now Leadership School. When we inquired about the rationale behind the change, we were informed that it is because we are a Leader in Me school. We have ethical and policy concerns about the move to name a school on behalf of a for-profit company and the school is contracted with. Additionally, Leader in Me is a highly controversial program that is in fact being removed from districts across the country. This program was purchased and continues to be maintained for tens of thousands of dollars using Title I funds. This feels a betrayal when our children don't even have equitable library services and are lucky if the library is open once per week. We brought forward 4 actual leaders, 4 incredible Black women for consideration. Bell Hooks led is a leader through collaboration, love, and community building. Again, the move towards Leadership School was not community engaged, was unilaterally decided by the committee, and is in direct opposition to our communities and your commitment toward anti-racist restorative action. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next group of speakers, Laura Chechel, Brian Jenkins, and Christopher Bono.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Chechel. I'm a registered nurse in the community here, and I'm also a parent of a child at Clay Elementary School. I wanted to speak today against the changing of the name of Clay Elementary to Rolling Hills Leadership Academy. The emotional labor that's gone into getting to this point has been extensive. By recommending Rolling Hills Leadership Academy, a name steeped in whitewashing authoritarian practices, you're upholding a long-standing pattern and foundation of white supremacy. I implore the members of this board to do the right thing and install Bell Hooks Elementary as the rightful name of our community school. I also ask you bring transparency and access to the naming process of schools in San Diego Unified moving forward, so that they remain free of inappropriate influence under the guise of an advisory role. Please teach our children when that something is wrong, they can rely on the adults and leaders in our community to make it right, renaming the school using the restorative name of Bell Hooks Elementary. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Jenkins, and I'm a parent of 2 graduates of Henry Clay Elementary and 1 student that is currently there right now. Before I begin, I do want to state how exhausted and disillusioned I am with this entire process. For nearly 2 years, we have begged the district to remove Henry Clay's name from this building and replace it with a name that is restorative and works to heal the wounds that have been created for nearly 70 years. It's really not that big of an ask, and yet 2 years later, here we are, and his name is still on the front of this building. When the district did finally acknowledge the structural racism behind Henry Clay's name, it handed the keys to a committee of people who, in my perception, had no problem with Clay being there in the first place. And so it's really no wonder why we are here today with the name being recommended that I would argue is still rooted in the same structural racism that Henry Clay's name is. There's much to discuss, but I do want to maybe with the small amount of time I have, narrow my focus on how this name came to be. So in an interview from Gary Pettil, who was the head of the names committee on November 13th, 2023, he justified Rolling Hills, and I quote, Rolling Hills Leadership Academy was added by the committee to the survey to include a naming option that pays homage to indigenous peoples by recognizing the region's geography according to the name description that was created by this committee. Tonight, this committee has justified its proposal through what I would argue is a disingenuous attempt at community engagement. Rolling Hills didn't come from any discussions or surveys. It was implemented by the committee as an alternative to renaming our school instead of renaming our school after a courageous, brilliant black female leader, scholar, and activist. Rolling Hills doesn't describe anything geographically unique to our neighborhood. It's ridiculous. Instead, it's an allusion to the Rolando neighborhood, which was named Rolando in the 1950s when developers were looking for something, quote, exotic. People will tell you that it's somehow related to Spanish. It is not a Spanish word. It is purely a way to market a neighborhood and get people to buy houses. It should also be noted, and I think Sabrina did a nice job of talking about this, that during that time, it was racially redlined. So I ask you today to reject Rolling Hills and instead vote to put Bell Hooks Elementary School on the name of our school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Bano. I'm also a community member and I have a daughter at the school. I want to bring up 2 points tonight. I'm sorry. The first is that I am extremely frustrated and disappointed with the leadership, not only in the school, but also on the board or the committee or whoever makes the decisions, because our community raised so much support. There were 1,200 names in the petition. We roamed the community, took so much time, over 2 years of effort, and our community wanted a restorative name, and the names committee did not represent the community when they made this decision to support this name. The last thing I just want to ask you is, this name is easy. We're asking you to be brave. We want a name that represents our students, and our student body is not all white children. It's not people that want to uphold slaveholders, so we want to change the name away from Henry Clay, and we want Bell Hooks, because we want a name that our students and our community members are not ashamed of. We want a name that they're proud of. We hope you support this decision. Thank you.
The next group of speakers, Rebecca McCrae, Becky Benitez, and Kara Vetter.
Good evening, board members and Mr. Superintendent. My name is Rebecca McCrae, and I'm here as a teacher from Clay Elementary School. I'm also here representing the teachers and staff at our school, with the exception of one person. First of all, I'd like to express appreciation and gratitude to this board and our district for working with our community for the last 2 years as we've navigated this renaming process. In the beginning, this process was empowering and brought many members of our community together. It was apparent at first that the process for renaming schools was under construction in our district, and that our journey would be one that would require us to work together. That is exactly what the Clay community did. We did everything the district asked of us to do throughout this process. We know many district staff members spent a great deal of time and energy to support us in this process, and for that, we thank you. Unfortunately, at this time, the whole process has been stalled, and our community is feeling negative effects because of this. The first read of this item could have easily taken place a month ago, as the presentation you saw tonight and the process have not changed since then. So tonight, we finally hear a first read, but again will be delayed in a vote being carried out. Per the agenda, a vote on this matter is not even scheduled at this time. I implore you to please make a decision on this matter as soon as possible. The delay on your part has contributed to so many divides in our community, as well as families expressing distrust of this district. The Clay community needs a vote so that we can move forward. I know that our community will be able to come together and grow from this experience once it is over. I know that it will take time and a lot of work, but I trust that my coworkers and community are the best, most capable people to make this happen together. Please do your part and vote on this matter. We need an answer so we can move forward as a community. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Becky Benitez, and I'm a teacher at Clay as well. I would like to reiterate what my college just shared, that we urge you to move forward and vote on our name change. When this process began, we were clearly informed that our suggestions did not mean we would be choosing what was the name that was chosen. That being said, no matter what name is chosen, there will be people who are not in support, so this should not delay us any further. Please move forward on the vote so this item can help our school move on to our next chapter. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Kara Vetter, and I'm a parent of 2 students at Clay Elementary who are here with us tonight. While I think we can all agree that changing the name is well past due, I have been disappointed to witness how the school district has responded to our reasonable request for collaboration and transparency in the renaming process. As my fellow parents, educators, and community members have shared, the name Rolling Hills was not one put forth by our community-led process. Calling it an homage to the indigenous people of this region without even naming the Kumeyaay Nation is an erasure of their thriving and active community, let alone including them in that renaming process. It is shameful that the renaming of this school has not been an equitable process with the district. I must also say that if we are to teach our children that cooperation, truth-telling, and sharing responsibility are important facets of leadership, then this renaming process has been the opposite of these tenets in every way. If we see a problem, then we must address a problem together, as only together can we affect lasting change in any real meaningful way. Thank you.
And our final two speakers, Rochelle Smith and Josh Vetter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rochelle Smith, and I'm here representing my daughter, who cannot be here. I'm the grandparent of twins that attend Clay Elementary School, boy and girl, and I was asked to be here on their behalf because they cannot make it tonight. So I'm kind of new in the area, and I've just become aware of the name change agenda, or initiative, rather. And I did a little research as a grandmother, and according to Miss Bell Hooks, she's an advocate for change, which is what I aspire to be. I'm in school getting my master's in behavioral science, clinical mental health, and I plan to be a helpmate or whatever I need to be for the school in the area. And what I liked about her is, she started with, what's love got to do with it? According to Bell Hooks, everything. Her inspiring work on engaged pedagogy based on well-being and critical consciousness is well worth reading. Bell Hooks was an African-American teacher, author, feminist, and social activist. Her pen name, borrowed from her maternal great-grandmother, is spelled without capital letters to draw attention to her ideas rather than her identity. Her approach to education focuses on critical pedagogy and the theoretical aspects of education, such as belonging, well-being, and community. And she will absolutely be honored, as she's in heaven, that the school is renamed after her. So that's what I want to say. Thank you all for allowing me this time. God bless.
Hello. My name's Josh Vetter. I'm a parent of 2 children at Clay. And I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet for y'all. I have the luxury this evening, something that I never have, of sharing the majority opinion that's been expressed here. You've heard so many people that I am absolutely privileged to share community with. That is something that I think is a blessing every day I wake up, that I live here, and I have so many beautiful and thoughtful, considerate people in my community that you've been hearing from. And I would implore you to take the work that they've done to heart and to show them the respect that they deserve for their efforts and for their bravery standing up here and doing what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. And do any trustees have questions or wish to discuss this item? Got a hand up, Trustee Whitehurst-Payne.
That is, that
Okay.
is, that is.
All right.
I have met with the district staff, and I expressed it then to them, and I'm expressing it again. I have some concerns about the way this was handled. My experience with name changing goes back to Pacific View Leadership Elementary School. And at one time, it was Robert E. Lee. But the way that was handled was that every child in the school, it became a school-wide activity, not just for a select few, but for everybody. They did the research, they worked through what they wanted. They all knew they wanted to change the name. I believe you said one of the legislators brought it to our attention. And they got on board. They were united in doing the research. They were united in having the students, every child vote. And at the end, there was unanimity among everyone about the name change. This has a funny feel to it, if you will, because in the very beginning, they were ignored. The 1,200 folks who brought the name to us in the beginning were ignored. And then finally, we found a way to talk to them and get that information. That's where the disconnect came in. From that point to now, the name change, the suggestion, I mean, it just doesn't feel right to me. I am also the trustee over Rolando Park. And Rolling Hills, you know, I'm looking around, where are the hills? I'm sorry. I wouldn't have thought a name of Rolling Hills. And then they said, well, it was because of Native Americans, but I don't think it matches somehow or another. I'm telling you, Superintendent, and I wanted this to come before the trustees because I know you've been approached. I don't know if you were, Sabrina, Richard. It just feels like we need to discuss it openly because we don't want a Brown Act violation with us going, yes, we don't want a Brown Act violation. So we needed to bring it here so we can discuss it openly. We've heard now from the community, we've heard from staff, but I want you guys to weigh in on this. I know someone mentioned the fact that we need a process that's transparent to all of us, not just to the community, but to all of us, so that we all know where we are, which step we're on, and we can say, yes, that's the step we're on and it's being followed. And I don't want to blame staff because I kind of got the feeling that they were just kind of the last ones on the totem pole who had to deal with this. And they weren't quite sure what they were dealing with. But I just think that it just doesn't feel right to me. So I've talked now, I'll let you guys talk.
Thank you. Trustee Barrera?
Yeah, thank you, President Hazan, and I appreciate Trustee Whitehurst-Payne where you're at. What we've heard tonight, I've heard two very strong and clear messages. One is this community is ready for a decision from this board so that it can move on. The second is a very compelling argument in favor of the name Bell Hooks. And given the messiness of the process, and again, I'm not blaming staff either, and I appreciate the presentation, but we had a board-appointed names committee. We don't have that now, so when we talk about a names committee, it's not the names committee that we've had. We've had a process that I think has been clear and that has been followed in the past by discussions about renaming a school, and it doesn't seem like that's been clear. We've heard tonight, we've seen the results of a survey, but we've also heard, I haven't heard an argument in favor of the name Rolling Hills Leadership Elementary School, even though I get that that's the recommendation coming from the Names Committee, although the Names Committee is not the Names Committee that we've understood it to be in the past. So, you know, it's a first reading. I would just say that what we need to do is we need to agendize the action item so that we can help this community move forward and come together. So I hope that that can happen soon. And if I was voting tonight, I would first defer to Trustee Whitehurst-Payne's recommendation, given that I think what this is doing is it's bringing the decision to the board because there's not clear consensus coming forward from the community. So I think we need to agendize. I think we need to make a decision. I've heard a compelling argument in favor of the name Bell Hooks. I have not heard an argument in favor of the name Rolling Hills Leadership Elementary School. I will defer to Trustee Whitehurst-Payne, but that's where I sit right now.
Thank you.
Vice President Petterson.
Thank you, President Hazan. So first of all, I want to thank staff. I want to thank everyone who showed up today and who has shown up over the last 2 or 3 years as well in this. And I also want to thank Trustee Whitehurst-Payne for framing it in the way she has. Given the controversy here, I think we've all studiously avoided pre-communicating. So this is genuinely the first time we're talking to our colleagues, which is like a little, I mean, not talking to our colleagues in that way is what we do all the time, but it's particularly uncomfortable when there's controversy because you recognize hashing things out on the dais is very challenging, having not only been on this board, but a watcher of boards in general. And so I'm recognizing the challenge of trying to hash this out on the dais, but I really appreciate Whitehurst-Payne creating the space for that because I do think it's appropriate given the context. I would say, first of all, whenever a process doesn't feel quite right, it's ultimately on the board for not having us worked with leadership team to establish that process. So I want to reiterate, this strikes me as a systemic problem that originates in the boards not having established a process or not having reestablished a process that was formally working. I think we've underspecified when I've tried to when I finally got the list of who was on the committee and who was invited to this or that meeting, to me it seemed like the primary engagement of the naming committee was to solicit and then receive survey data, which is not really how you'd want a professional central office, how you'd want to establish a process in which a naming committee was actively engaged in creating a unitary, universal process that would be applied in all situations like this. This is likely not going to be the first time in our tenure that this is going to happen, the last time in our tenure that this is going to happen. So I think right out of the gate, we're going to need to establish a better process because this is not satisfactory. And in fact, it's led to, the metric of it not having been satisfactory is that it's led to disunity on this thing, which is not what a board wants to see in terms of a recommendation. We'd like to see some consensus. I'll say specifically in relation to the recommendation coming from the committee, I have some concerns. First of all, and it was mentioned by one of the speakers, I have a pretty fundamental concern with Leadership Academy or Leadership Elementary being included in the name per se. That is I was told by multiple people engaged in the process that it was an homage to the vendor product Leader in Me and to the fact that the school had achieved the Lighthouse School. And that is something, that is a wonderful achievement to have obtained that Lighthouse designation. But ultimately, I think it's bad form to include a vendor product in the name of a school. This is a public school. There may ultimately be another site leader, another leadership team, or other forces may come into play that the school community may not be satisfied with that product. And then there is an anchoring effect of the name that in fact makes it difficult to move away from a vendor product, which is not where we want to be as a public school. And I think This is something we'd have to discuss with the board moving forward, but I think in general, elementary schools should be elementary schools, high schools should be high school. I think there's a strong case to be made for there to be a universal naming convention in relation to our different levels. And I think that would help us to avoid this kind of a problem. There could be other vendor products that got folded into names in the future that I would be find equally problematic. I'll say too, in relation to Rolling Hills and Rolando, as a Spanish speaker, Rolling Hills does not, that's a false etymology in terms of bringing it back to Rolling Hills. Rolando is not the Spanish word for, it's a Spanglish word for people who've been exposed to rolling and then back translating it into Spanish, but that is not the Spanish word for rolling, and certainly not rolling in the aspect of the way we describe hills as being rolling. So, and I also hear what the community has said in relation to it, but I find it problematic. I'll just say one other thing. In terms of survey distribution, it is concerning that we have underspecified how we want surveys distributed. I don't think surveys are a great tool. Sometimes they're necessary. But in relation to this, the survey was actually distributed to the Rolando School Community and the Rolando Community Council. I serve on the Hoyt Town Council. There's a very important role to be played by town councils and community councils. That we have chronic problems in community planning groups and town councils in having board bodies that are representative of the community. It tends to select for particular populations that are able to participate in that way in a council. So I would have concerns out of the gate with us having underspecified who we want to engage in the survey process. My understanding from multiple people in the process was that, in fact, the Rolling Hills name was suggested by the Rolando Community Council, which just adds to the challenge around it. So all told, I have a lot of concerns about the recommendation coming from the committee. I'm very sensitive to the fact this is not, I'm not a parent in this school. This is not my sub-district. I appreciate Trustee Whitehurst-Payne giving me the opportunity to share my concerns, because ultimately we have to make the decision collectively. I would say, I want to echo what Trustee Whitehurst-Payne said in relation to what a process that, and I didn't know about Pacific View in terms of that process, but when I saw this, my thought was, wow, it would be great to lead with students and to lead with curriculum and education about what does it mean to name a school? What does it mean when you distribute a survey with, frankly, for the general population, fairly obscure African-American, they're not obscure to me, I did my Master of Fine Arts in poetry. I know Bell Hooks very well, I know a lot of these folks very well, but when you compare these sort of fairly publicly obscure Black revolutionary transformative thinkers with a sort of anodyne, Happy Acres, Rolling Hills, whatever that is, your average person seeing the survey is gonna be like, I don't know who these names are, but I know what a rolling hill is, let's just go with Rolling Hills. So the nature of a survey, per se is going to select for the sort of less restorative, the less transformative name. So I'm not right from here, and again, I would defer to Trustee Whitehurst-Payne. I have a lot of concerns about the process that we established. I think we underspecified this process, and we did not give adequate guidance to staff. I am cognizant of the fact that we've heard from teachers saying, we really need to move the process forward, so I understand the nature of it, and I've heard from the community in terms of what their consensus is. I leave it to Trustee Whitehurst-Payne for a recommendation, but those are my concerns, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share those in a transparent fashion.
Thank you. Superintendent Jackson?
I do want to remind us as a board a couple things. One, and one of our teachers mentioned this, the decision is for the board, not the names committee or anyone else. The second piece, I know that, and I appreciate the discussion of the process and the names committee. That is very technical. I'm not going to get all Heifetz on us, but I will mention it. This is an adaptive issue. This is about identity. This is about relationships. And for me, watching 5 schools be renamed, whether the committee was established or whether we're saying we need a better process, of the 5, 4 of them were controversial. And so I just want to make sure that we're not landing it on the process per se. Do we need to get better? Absolutely. Clarity, transparency, I totally agree. So I just want to invite us to pay attention to that. And it was mentioned a couple of times. I mean, the community, those folks here, I don't want to suggest that I think there were 10 speakers represent the entire community. But they're here. They've put 2 years into this. There's some investment there. There's some ownership there that's going to play into any process. And you hear the teacher saying, hey, we need to move forward. We got some teaching and learning to take place. And I want to say I appreciate the fact that collectively, the one thing that we can agree on is Henry Clay will not be the name. Let's just, not enough has been said around that. And so I want to acknowledge the community members who are speaking here, the staff members who are here, the leaders, Lindsay, for leading a school for this board. I don't want those things to get lost. So I felt compelled to make mention and remind us, we as humanity have to see our way through this, not a process, because we can do all of those things. And when we come up with a name, I mean, there are 5 recommendations and only one is the winner. Others who voted for the 4 others are going to be upset. And so we have to be able to hold that as well. And I just want to remind us of that, because there's a lot that we're saying around the process. These are difficult components. And I agree with you, Trustee Petterson, is Dr. Whitehurst-Payne holds the community because she gets to go to many, many different meetings, hear from different people in this. And so we lean on her, but we as a collective board have to come together on this one.
Thank you. Trustee Bazzo?
Thank you, and thank you for this dialogue. And I also appreciate Dr. Whitehurst-Payne for bringing this forward. And also appreciate my conversation with Jerrod around this issue. And I go back to what you say, Dr. Jackson, about one of my first meetings here on the board was the renaming of Sarah High School. And this is a whole high school. So, and that was, they changed their name to Canyon Hills. So it's not unprecedented to use a landmark. I understand that it's different here. There was a different concern about but, you know, I think also what you brought up, Trustee Petterson, I was confused by the Leadership Academy too, because aren't all of our schools like for leaders? I mean, it just seemed, yeah, a little bit of an entitled private school name, if I'm being completely honest. So I do have concerns with that, but I also feel very strongly that us as a board should not be the ones naming this school, because in 30 years, 50 years, none of us are going to be here, but that community is still going to be there. So I do defer back to Trustee Whitehurst-Payne and the community. And, you know, if we need to go back to the drawing board to do this, we'll do that. But I don't think it's, I guess when it gets to the point where it's us, I think it needs to go back to the community. And maybe we go back to Canyon Hills and talk to them about how, I mean, they got a whole high school on board. I know it wasn't completely smooth, but they had, you know, has there been conversation with other schools that have gone through this process? Maybe those communities, because I know that they did do a lot of community outreach as well. But it sounds like, you know, we need to go back to the drawing board and work on this a little bit more. So thank you to everyone involved.
Trustee Quitoriano.
Thank you, and I first really want to thank our staff for really putting together all of this. I mean, I really appreciated what Trustee Whitehurst-Payne said about the idea of a funny feeling, because I've thought about this and like we've had this conversation in our meetings, and like walking me through the process, logically it seems okay, but there's, again, this funny feeling that I have. And partially it's because I think Trustee Petterson did a really great job about this, is that if we want to have a transformative name, if we want to have a restorative name, it's inherently paradoxical to use a survey, because the point of a transformative name is that it changes cultures, it changes and makes a positive impact on communities. And so a survey isn't the best way to do that. And so when I look at this survey, and I wonder if, like, first, is a survey really the best way to go about this? Recognizing that, okay, we have teaching that needs to happen in classrooms, we need to move on. And, like, I also appreciate what Trustee Whitehurst-Payne said about framing this about this is fundamentally our decision, but look, if I could make the decision, I have deep admiration for Bell Hooks, and I would immediately choose to have Bell Hooks Elementary School be the school. But that's not my place. It should be rooted in the visions and values of our community. And so if our community isn't on board with this, if we go out to create a survey through our prescribed process, and the prescribed process comes with a name that comes out with a name that many community members also have a fundamental problem with, I think that's not a description of the community, but it's a description of our process. And I think it's a great statement, or not great, but it's a important statement about the process that we're using. And so I think in our one-on-one, we did a very good job. I think you guys did a very good job of outlining what exactly that survey process was. In the presentation specifically today, that you didn't really go into as much depth. But I think what is really irking me about all of this is that there is a deep divide in the community, in what our community is what their community is arguing, and what our data shows, and we're asked to settle that debate, and that's not our job, that's not my job. I think that's the job of the committee, and it's clear that they're not doing that. And so, I mean, I think staff has done a phenomenal job. I mean, you've outlined all the processes that made that happen, but it's clear that those phenomenal processes are not enough, and I appreciate that this is a first reading. I would absolutely not feel comfortable voting on this right now, and so I really look forward to seeing what this looks like in the future.
Thank you, and I know Superintendent Jackson wanted to add something.
Just for clarity, our names committee is not responsible for settling that debate. There will inevitably be debates around names. I think, to your point, the data coming in is how do we come together as a community. I think one of our educators said it specifically, that this community is going to find their way together. And it is based on the speakers tonight, there is some level of divide. But it is unfortunately, the way it is our responsibility as a board, collective board, to make the final decision on renaming with the information coming to us. However it's coming to us, the board has to discern from that, and the committee can help inform the board on processes, what took place, but ultimately the board is here, put in office by the constituents to make those decisions. That's the formal piece. I think we all can agree, to your point, we'd love for it to be a collective decision by the community coming forward, like, we're together on this.
Right, and I fundamentally agree that, I mean, at the end of the day, this is fundamentally our decision, and it's the goal of the Names Committee to help us make an informed and valuable decision. And what I'm saying is that from what the information that I have right now in front of me, I don't have that, given the disconnect between community voices and this survey. That's what I'm pointing at.
And I think it's, I mean, so just for folks here, I'm facilitating. I'm not, going right, left. I'm saying, we can look at data any way we want and make the decisions, right? We could say, to your point, Trustee Barrera, speakers have come forward. I believe, just factual, there were 10 speakers. And we have a petition of 1,200 folks. We also have, after the petition, 106 folks who voted for something else. And so that's what we have to discern. We have to go through that and figure out what we're hearing, and then also what we value as a board. I think that's really, really important to hold on to, because we can say, well, the survey didn't work, but to Dr. Whitehurst-Payne's point, at Pacific View, they did a survey and it worked. That's why I say this isn't a technical issue. This is more of an adaptive issue that we have to work through. So thank you, President Hazan.
Thank you. And yes, Trustee Lavender Williams. And then I do want to just add, before you jump in, I apologize. I do think there's consensus that there were challenges in the process. We've heard multiple people say, I have a funny feeling about this. And so I do want to just acknowledge that there is consensus around that. There is consensus around the fact that a year ago, this board said, yeah, let's change that name. Nobody wants the name. So I think all of those things are true. And I'll save the rest, but just go ahead, Trustee Lavender Williams.
No, thank you. By the time it gets to me, everyone already kind of said pretty much everything, so I'll make it short, I promise. Definitely amazing conversations from the community and our educators on what they want and what they believe. Something else I just want to really shine light on is we see these surveys and we see 106 response, but I don't see any students in that. I don't see any student opinions, student voices. And I definitely understand, as Trustee Petterson was saying earlier, about how we might not understand the importance of what this name might mean. But I believe that our students are intelligent enough to understand that process and to speak with them on what that would mean, considering that they're going to be the students going to the school and the ones representing what that name is actually going to be meaning. So I just want to shine light on that we should definitely have more student input on this conversation.
They did do student surveys, but it was kind of
Trustee
squishy.
Whitehurst-Payne, yeah, go ahead.
Samir, you may want to come and address that.
What's the question? Oh, were there any
The
students who
were
participated in the
involved,
survey?
But not, I was talking about something totally different.
Yeah, so if you could speak to the composition of survey respondents. If you could just speak to the composition of all of the survey respondents.
Sure. So the survey was emailed to Clay Elementary families and staff. Now, whether families engaged their students in responding, that I'm not sure. But prior to distributing the survey, the school site did do some work with students that helped inform, the final survey and the feedback that was given to the committee. And Lindsay might be able to talk more about that.
I can speak to that. So when the board first voted to change the name of Clay, I engaged our student lighthouse team, which is representative of students in UTK through 5, and invited them. I explained the process. I explained what was happening. I said our school board has voted to rename our school. I gave them some background information about the why and the rationale. And I said, so a lot of these people, a lot of these adults have never been to our school. So what would you tell them? What word would you use to represent our school? And so they all just jotted down words. And one of the words that was mentioned most was leadership, as is something that we, not because of Leader Me, but just the culture of who we are, as we believe our students are leaders. So that was one of the bigger words in the word art that I made that came forward. That word art is on the first survey that went out to community members seeking input, because I wanted our community members to know these are the words to our students that represent our school site. After that, we engaged after we received the 5 names and got the final survey, we engaged our student lighthouse team again, and they decided to have our 3rd through 5th grade students participate in the survey. So they went to every room with our lighthouse coordinator and received input from the students. And we shared this data with the names committee as well. The results were 60% for Rolling Hills, 20% James Baldwin, and 20%
I wrote it down, I didn't bring my notebook.
But it sounds like students did participate, not in the survey, but
they did their own, we decided
the committee
to do,
heard their feedback.
Yes, and like Samir said, if families had their students take the Google survey, they were absolutely able to, but then we did engage the students in a separate process, and that data was shared with the names committee as well.
Thank you. So I guess my biggest takeaway from all of this, and I think first, thank you, Trustee Whitehurst-Payne, for bringing this to all of us, for ensuring that we collectively have the opportunity to talk about this. I wish we would have done it a year ago. I think I just want to accept responsibility, and I heard Vice President Petterson saying this was our work, this is the work of the board, and we never established a process for doing this. And so it's been bumpy, it's been messy, and I also heard the superintendent say, irrespective of the process, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers, and some people may not be happy. I think that's true, but I think for me, knowing that we do not have a school naming process is problematic. And I think we need to do the work as a district to develop that process, to clarify what are the overarching visions and values of our district that we want to inform names. How do communities go about renaming, whether it's initiated by a group of students, which was the case at Canyon Hills, or community members, as is the case here, or Nippawai. We built a brand new school and we had to come up with a name for it. We seem to do this sort of ad hoc and as these one-offs, but we know we need to name schools. It is part and parcel of the work we need to do, and so I would like staff to come back to us with a recommendation for a thoughtful process and for us to be able to get clear on what that process is, because I think at the very least we owe it to the community, to our constituents who spent 2 years going through hoops through this frankly non-existent process that we were making up as we went along, and that doesn't feel right to me. And so I think that's really, really important. I want to own that we were not transparent with the community. I think we they thought, oh, we need to collect these petitions. They collected all these petitions. Then we said, well, here's what we have to do. You actually have to do this thing, and then we're going to do this survey. And the survey informs the names committee, but we can't tell you who's on the names committee. I think we need to be transparent. We need to have a clear, consistent process. When we don't have clear, consistent processes that are used at every single school, processes become inequitable. That's concerning to me. And so I think what I'm grappling with is there's this urgency, because nobody, I don't think, at least nobody on this dais, I don't think anybody in the room that we've heard from wants the name Henry Clay Elementary. And so I guess the question I ask is there a way for us to remove the name immediately while we develop a process, clarify that process, not just for the school, but across the district, and then work through and develop a community-centered name? And again, defer to Trustee Whitehurst-Payne, and who is closest to that community, but to go through that process and then determine a name. And I think about, and I'm not a huge sports fan, but the Washington, formerly Redskins, which said, this is a bad name. So they became, I think, the Washington football team. I'm looking to like anybody who knows sports, right? We're gonna be the Washington football team until we come up with Guardians, right? So I think my question is, can we say this is a bad name, nobody wants this name, let's take that name off the building, come up with something temporary, I know it'll be weird and awkward like the Washington football team was, and then really develop a process that we all are clear on, that we can all stand behind. It sounds like we had a names committee, and the composition of that committee was clear at one point. We no longer do. I think also getting clear on the staff who lead the work. I think you've both done an amazing job, but it strikes me that this work should be led, so often renaming needs to be restorative. We have staff who lead restorative justice work, and so I wonder why staff who lead restorative justice work aren't leading these kinds of processes, and could there be a cross-functional team of RJ staff and construction facilities staff working together to think about all of this. So I guess one of the things I heard from Trustee Barrera was a request to agendize an action item at the next meeting. And I guess the question is the desire of this board to vote on a name at the next meeting, or to receive recommendations about a process? And is there an appetite for removing the name temporarily as we work to more meaningfully, to go through a different process, or a process we can all get behind before coming up with the name? One of my trustees.
I appreciate what everybody's saying. It feels like we're torturing this community. We're just, I think we need to correct our process. I frankly think we had a very clear process, and we had a board-appointed Brown Act open meeting names committee. So I think we have to do that work to redevelop our process, but I think we also should take action on this item, and I think that allows the community to move forward, and I absolutely hear, Superintendent, that with the best of all processes, that doesn't mean that there's going to be consensus in the community, and I don't think any of us expect that. But I think we've heard a lot, and I think we should take action on this school and develop our process.
And I would go for Bell Hook tonight if I had to vote tonight. And the main reason, the piece that bothers me more than anything else is you had 1,200 people expressing an interest in this. And then we get down to 106, and we ultimately come down to 55 people making this decision, and it doesn't sound like somehow or another this group, I don't know, haven't been a researcher, I would want to see how these surveys were stratified. Blessing was concerned about how many students. I don't know, I don't like that piece of it. Given that Bell Hook is the second name, and I don't think anybody on this dais has a real strong feeling for Rolling Hills tonight, if I had to vote, and I know we vote next week rather than tonight, I would go with the Bell Hook because it has the second highest number of votes, and we have the right to make that decision ourselves. I hear what you say. I agree with it. We need a process, but I don't want to torture this school with, like, 2 years from now, we'll get around to, after we've gone through, we've put staff through something again, and we've gone over and over, and it just drags out, and we wind up with coming back to one of the names. My vote tonight would be for Bell Hook. That's just me. I'm one of 5, and I recognize that. And
I think I heard Trustee Barrera share that sentiment as well. And I guess looking to the other trustees about whether you would like to have a name come before you at our next meeting to vote on. Vice President Petterson?
I don't know that, this is a non-motion, non-vote, but I would support Trustee Whitehurst-Payne's recommendation.
I would absolutely support that as well. And I think the two of you did a phenomenal job of outlining what exactly that survey process looked like. If you can kind of give a brief, I know you didn't really go into the details, but I mean, that was what was really striking to me, is to go from 1,000 to 106. Can you talk about, I'm sorry to bring you back up to the podium, but just really quickly what that process kind of looked like?
And we're here to answer any questions you have, so keep firing them off. So if I recall the petition was to change the name of Clay, and that garnered about 1,000+ signatures. Perhaps the community members could correct me if I'm mistaken, but I don't think within the petition it suggested which names to change it to. I think that's something that came in the actual proposal that was submitted to the district. I just don't know whether when folks were signing the petition, they were also signing for those 4 names, and that was something that wasn't necessarily clear to the committee. Does that answer your question? So how we go from 1,000 to 100? We don't necessarily also know who the 1,000 folks are, one of the lessons that staff we've learned in previous name change processes is that frequently there's a lot of community engagement that takes place external to the district, which we're not necessarily part of or privy to, right? And then it gets brought to us for consideration. The school names committee of last year felt that it was important that when we do community input, there needs to be a community input process that's driven by the district as well. And that's how we got to surveys, for example. We used a survey to name the Mission Valley School, Nyipawe Elementary School. And an interesting data point, Nyipawe was the number 3 vote in that public survey, right? And the committee last year decided that the number 3 vote was still the proper name for that school, and that's the recommendation they brought forth.
Quick question. Do you know who the 106 are?
So we have asked for zip code and whether you're a parent, a staff, a student, or just general community member, so we have a better idea of who the 106 are than the
And what's
1,000.
that? What's that breakdown? Or do you have that?
Oh, if I could grab my laptop and pull it up for a
That's
second,
great.
just one
Yeah.
second.
Not to torture you here, but
Yeah, and I'm wondering, because we're not voting now, I'm wondering if I imagine there may be more data or information everybody wants, and so I'm wondering if maybe we can compile that and put it together and provide it in advance of the next meeting.
Just give me 1 second here to find everything.
So I guess, would you like it now or later?
honestly, mine was a point of information, but if it's not going to be readily accessible, that's all right. You can come back.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is there is a sense of urgency from trustees that we agendize an item, that we decide on a name, that name be community informed, and after that, that a process is developed that is used consistently so that we can clarify to anyone who comes to us, whether from inside the school, outside the school, to change a name, exactly what that process is, and so that as a board, we're really clear about what it is. The other thing I will add is also knowing what the timeline is. I don't think it is ever right for it to take over a year to rename a school, so let's get clear on that. And the last thing I will add is I do want to be mindful of all of the staff capacity required to do this, and we can't do this a lot of times during a year. And so I think the other thing that should come out of this process is how many name changes do we even have the capacity to do in a given year, and being thoughtful about that. Superintendent Jackson?
Just for clarity, I want to make sure that everyone here, watching, listening, understands that the committee did bring this forward earlier, over a month ago.
Yeah.
There were questions from the community at that point. We then said, hold off, let's get some more information before we bring the first read. So this, I'm going to take responsibility.
I'll take
for
responsibility.
delaying. No, I'm going to beat you to this. You know, one of the things that we do talk about is making sure that we have the best information for our board to make the decisions. And there were questions, and this happens. This does happen, and so it was not the decision of the names committee not to bring this forward. This was my decision to say we need to make sure each trustee in our one-on-ones separately were brought up to speed with where we are before we came this evening. And then part of our board processes is that we have a first reading, and it has been the intent of the committee and staff, superintendent, to bring this forward at our next meeting. It wasn't going to be this first read and then let's wait 6 months before. So I want to clarify for everyone here that it was not the names committee, the principal, Sam, or anyone else. It was a decision that I made to pull the item, educate, come forward tonight. So thank you for leading this effort as well, and thank you for all the feedback.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone. And just to clarify, as we're wrapping this up, my feedback around the
Do you want us to share the?
Oh, yeah, just one second. My feedback around the length of time it's taken really represents the, I think, year that the community was trying to figure out how do we rename, and then an additional year before we got to this point. And so it's really not about the last month. It's about everything leading up to this. And yeah, if you want to share that last data point, and then we'll move on.
So 67% of the responding votes came from the actual zip code of the school. And then those votes broke down to 67% or 71 votes came from a parent guardian of an enrolled student. 23 votes came from a staff member. 5 votes from a neighbor, a campus neighbor. 13 from a community member, and then 3 from students.
And then we can break it down to by, who voted and what, if we can, of course, we can
It's fine,
disagree
yeah,
more
yeah,
if-
thank you.
Yeah, if that's helpful.
Thank you both so much. I know this has been way more work than either of you bargained for over the last year, and really appreciate the time. And we will land this plane very soon.
But really quick, just to be clear of what we're asking for staff, per the recommendation, what appears as consensus, what we are asking staff to come back with, to try to get 4 votes for Bell Hooks Elementary? Is that what it's going to come back as, or what's it going to come back as?
So we will be coming back with a recommendation for the board to take action at our next meeting. I will also begin, and we've already started working on a process that we will then bring to the board at a future. I'm not going to be able to commit to in 2 weeks. We have some other things happening right now as we think about staffing and personnel matters. So that I love the fact that we're talking about renaming a school and needing that. But we have some other things happening as well, so.
And by action, you mean
Yes.
pick a name.
Pick a name.
Yes.
We pick a name. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, everybody.